HTTP Request Smuggling, HRS, is a web application vulnerability that can have serious consequences for the security of your web application. In this blog post, we'll take a closer look at how ours works with an example, and what you can do to protect your web application against it. The basics of HTTP Request Smuggling. HTTP Request Smuggling is a technique that exploits inconsistencies in the way that different HTTP servers and proxies handle certain types of requests. The goal is to trick a server or proxy into forwarding a malformed HTTP request to another server, which can lead to a wide range of security issues. There are several different ways to carry out an HTTP request smuggling attack, but one of the most common is known as the HTTP desync attack. This attack takes advantage of the fact that different HTTP servers and proxies can interpret the same request in different ways, depending on how the request is formatted and how it is transmitted. An example of HTTP request smuggling. Let's look at an example of how an HTTP desync attack might work in practice. Suppose that you have a web application that uses a front-end proxy server to handle incoming HTTP requests. The proxy server uses HTTP/1.1, and it is configured to forward requests to your web server using the same protocol. Now, suppose that an attacker sends a specially crafted HTTP request to your proxy server. The request might look something like this. Makefile copy code. Host/index.php HTTP/1.0. Host, example.com. Content length, 10. Transfer encoding, chunked. 0. Git/admin HTTP/1.1. Host, example.com. This request is designed to be ambiguous, so that it can be interpreted in different ways by different components of the system. The first part of the request, up to the double new line, is a valid HTTP/1.0 request with a content length of 10. The second part of the request is a valid HTTP/1.1 request with a transfer encoding header set to chunked. When the proxy server receives this request, it will attempt to interpret it according to the HTTP specification. However, because the request is ambiguous, it may be interpreted differently by different components of the system. In this case, the proxy server may be tricked into thinking that the content length of the first request is 0, and that the second request is part of the same request body. If the proxy server is configured to use HTTP pipelining, where multiple requests are sent in a single connection, it may forward the entire request to the web server as a single request. This can lead to all sorts of security issues, including the ability to bypass authentication mechanisms, inject malicious code into a web page, or gain access to sensitive data. How to protect against HTTP request smuggling? HTTP request smuggling can be a difficult vulnerability to detect and prevent, but there are some steps that you can take to protect your web application. Use a secure and up-to-date web server and proxy server. Implement strict HTTP request parsing rules to ensure that requests are handled consistently. Use a web application firewall, WAF, that is specifically designed to detect and prevent HTTP request smuggling attacks. Conduct regular vulnerability assessments and penetration tests to identify any vulnerabilities in your web application. In conclusion, HTTP request smuggling can be a serious threat to the security of your web application. By understanding how ours works and taking steps to protect against it, you can help to keep your web application secure and protect against potential attacks.